Hello beautiful people, my name is Vendi and it's about time that I tell you what I read in July, don't you think? So the month of July is my absolute worst reading month on record this year. I only read 5 books, but considering some of them were a little bit chunky, I still think that's a pretty decent number. I know this is basically like a meme for my videos now, but I really don't have very much time to film, so without further ado, let me show you what I read in the month of July. I'm going to be using the same reviewing method that I used for last month, wherein I sort of summarize the book and then I tell you one thing I liked and one thing I didn't about it. The first book that I read in the month of June was Clan of the Cave Bear by Jean M. Owl. I actually buddy read this with my friend Celise, and I'll have her channel linked in the description box below. So Clan of the Cave Bear follows Ayla, a Cro-Magnon child, who is separated from her people and taken in by a clan of Neanderthals called the Clan of the Cave Bear. Ayla is forced to live by their customs, though her instincts sort of pull her away from what the clan expects proper behavior to be. And as she grows up, Ayla has to learn who she is and decide who she wants to be, while at the same time trying to navigate a very hostile environment and the rage and bullying of a clan male who has a considerable amount of power, especially compared to her. So the things I liked, just about all of it. Clan of the Cave Bear has some very vivid characters, and the interactions between these characters are like nothing I've ever read before. You're not just told what the relationships are between people, you can sort of see them and feel them develop, and they're very rich, and some of them are infuriating, and some of them are just so heartwarming. I just felt so much in this book, both my own emotional responses to what was going on, and I sort of felt what the characters felt while they were feeling it. Additionally, the world building was very vivid, like on par with high fantasy, and I am a huge fan of that. Things I didn't like. The writing style of this book alternated between being kind of hyper simplistic and also sort of overstuffed with this encyclopedic knowledge of the world. Obviously, the author had to do a lot of research, and I think that after doing all that research, she felt weird not including it in the book, and I'm not sure that it always helped move the book forward. Sometimes it was to the book's detriment. My overall rating for Clan of the Cave Bear was 4 out of 5 stars. The second book I read in July was Simplicissimus by Johann Grimmelshausen. Simplicissimus follows the life, literally from childhood to death, of Simplicius Simplicissimus. And he is a peasant's son, turned soldier, turned lord, turned bandit, and all the way back again. The story chronicles his life during the 30 Years' War. As far as things I liked, the first half of Simplicissimus was really great. It was very funny at times, it was very grim at others, and sometimes the funniness and the grimness blended together, so I didn't know if I wanted to laugh or cry, and that's always fun. At the start of this book, Simplicius is a really endearing and sweet character. He doesn't think the way that a person that was raised in our modern society does. He's far more kind, and I think that was a really refreshing thing to read. As far as things I didn't like, it's when all that stuff started to go downhill. Around the second half of the book, Simplicius sort of becomes insufferable, and I know that he's supposed to sort of mimic the way that we are modern day humans who weren't hermits for their whole lives, but he becomes unlikable and there's no real development that gets him to that point. It's just as if a switch is turned on one day and it's like, now he is mean, and I'm not a fan of that. You know that I love my characters and I can't stand when they are not developed properly. Additionally, the second half of this book is when the story started to get a little repetitive. I mean, there's only so many times that I can hear that, oh, now that he is educated, Simplicius is good at everything. He is the handsomest and the richest and the best soldier and the most cunning, and just, okay, but it's gonna bite him in the butt just like it's bitten him in the butt the last 30 times that this has happened. Overall though, I did like Simplicissimus, and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. The third book I read was The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. The Last Wish is the first of the books that inspired the video game series The Witcher. It is a collection of short stories, each one inspired by a different fairy tale, and it follows Geralt. And Geralt is a witcher, and from what I can gather, a witcher is a humanoid but not quite sort of being that essentially acts as a mercenary that hunts monsters for money. It's kind of like the TV show Supernatural, but less bad. So as far as things I liked, I really love the way that the fairy tales were used as inspiration for the short stories in this collection. I think Sapkowski did a really good job of keeping to the true, gritty, grim nature of these fairy tales, while also incorporating them really effectively in the world that he had created for himself. Speaking of the world building of this series is absolutely fantastic. Like, I can very easily understand why somebody would want to make a video game series based off of it. It's just very vivid, and there's a lot of political intrigue, and it's just, so good. As far as things I didn't like, how do I explain this? So there seems to be a conflation of femininity and female sexuality with monstrosity. Just about all of the ladies in this series, and I can count them on one hand, were some sort of fell beastie that met a grisly end or something of the like. And almost all of them had some sort of sexual attraction that may or may not have been, consummated with our protagonist Geralt. This is a pretty common thing to find, especially in high fantasy, and especially in high fantasy written by men. But it doesn't make it any less for me when I read it. If you'd like to know more about that topic, I have some articles linked in the description box below about the Monstrous Feminine, which is a term that sort of encapsulates that idea. But as far as it goes for this collection of short stories, while it did bother me, it didn't bother me so much, and I ended up giving The Last Wish a 4 out of 5 stars because I thoroughly enjoyed it. After The Last Wish, I took a little bit of a break until the start of the Booktubeathon, and the first book that I read for that was Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Alire Sainz. So Ari and Dante follows two young Mexican-American boys, obviously named Aristotle and Dante, and the story follows their discovery of their identities both as Mexican boys and as queer boys through their pretty unlikely friendship, which blossoms into deeper feelings despite the roadblocks that self-doubt and the external environment create for the two of them. So the pros of this book are 100% the characters. Hands down, the development of Ari and Dante and their family dynamics was the highlight of this book for me. It is through these dynamics that each of the boys kind of comes to terms with who they are and comes to terms with their feelings for one another. And I think the exploration of what it means to be both Mexican and American and not quite feel like you fit into one or the other or either is really important, especially for characters as young as Ari and Dante are throughout this book. I would have super enjoyed this book, but the writing style. That is my main con, if you can't tell, is Benjamin Alire Sainz's writing style. There's something about it that just made it so that I could not get into it. It was a little hyper simplistic, but I couldn't get into it. It was a little bit like a less good version of The Catcher in the Rye. And with most books, if I have some difficulty with the writing style, I'm able to sort of distance it from my enjoyment of the book by sort of ignoring it after a while. But despite how quickly I got through this book, and despite how pacey it was and how much I loved the characters, I could not shake the fact that something was kind of wrong with the way it was written for me. The problem with this one for me is that it was narrated entirely by Aristotle, and he's not exactly someone who's prone to a lot of self-reflection that he wants to share with us. It felt like he was keeping secrets both from us as the reader and from himself, which sort of created a barrier, which meant that I couldn't 100% empathize with him. Perhaps if it was told from Dante's point of view, I would have liked it a little more. But as it is, I gave it a 3.65 out of 5 stars. And I know it's hyper-specific. It's because I have hyper-specific thoughts about it. Let's just leave it at that. And the last book that I read in the month of July was Song of the Sparrow by Lisa Ann Sendell. So Song of the Sparrow is a book written in verse, and it follows Elaine. Elaine, who is basically a younger version of the Lady of Shalott, is the only woman living inside of King Arthur's camp as they do battle with the Saxons and try to save what it means to be English after the Romans get their butts out of the British Isles. When Arthur takes the throne, things are a little rockier than normal, and a battle is looming in the future. As a woman, Elaine can do nothing really directly with the fighting, but she and the future Queen Guinevere find that despite that, they are the ones who are instrumental in protecting their friends and comrades and fellow English countrymen from meeting a grisly end before England is even England. So as far as things I like, this is a very nostalgic book for me. I read it, I think, the first time in early middle school, no, in 5th grade, and I absolutely fell in love. I think this is the book that got me into Arthurian legend. And this is essentially a piece of Arthurian legend that is told from a woman's point of view. As far as cons go, my problem is that they're not actually cons to me. Is it riddled full of anachronistic behavior for both men and women? Yes. Is the central conflict of Song of the Sparrow something that it's almost laughably easily resolved? Yes. But do I still love it? Yeah. I don't believe in the concept of guilty pleasure reads, but if I did, I think this would be up there. It's a very comforting, fun read to me, and I definitely understand why there's people who don't like it. I just personally do. My overall rating for Song of the Sparrow is somewhere between a 3.75 and a 4 out of 5. Alrighty guys, that is it for the books that I read in the month of July. It is a short list, but the way that August is going and the way the Booktubeathon went means that next month you're in for a long video, so get your snacks ready if you're that kind of a person. Anyway though, that is it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please leave it a thumbs up, and if you like me, maybe consider subscribing to my channel. Either way though, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time with a new video very, very soon. Goodbye.